Remember the good old days? Well, an article on This Is Money says that the good old days were between 2015 and 2020. And if I try to remember what it was like back then, this was when Airbnb was blowing up, Uber was blowing up as well. Interest rates were really, really low. And then you're seeing all these property developers, the rise of landlords. So there was a lot of money being thrown around in the economy. So it did feel like the good old days because we benefited from a really, really low interest rate. And what did this mean? For me personally, I managed to actually buy a flat. I bought a property for myself in 2018. And that was all off the back of having low interest rates. I managed to save up as well. We had good schemes at that point as well, the Help to Buy scheme. But today, I really want to talk about the rise of needing your parents. So, we're going to be talking about the bank of mom and dad. And it actually started with millennials. We're the first generation that has needed, at a bigger scale in terms of the most people in our generation have needed support from our parents to either get on the property ladder, to even start a family because childcare is so high, and also other things like maybe further education as well. So, money for going to university. So I just want to talk about the misconceptions, especially for millennials and Gen Z and the younger people right now, what we may be feeling compared to what the older generation believe they experienced. And also, we have had good times as well. Literally, only 10 years ago, well, less than 10 years ago, we experienced the good old days, financially speaking. If you're watching this in October 2024, then you would have been watching on the news that inflation has reduced a little bit more. But this is a little bit controversial because some of the items that they haven't included in that index are considered to be essential. So take it with a pinch of salt. And people on social media are talking about how they don't feel like it's cheaper. Yes, inflation has gone down, but the overall cost of living keeps going up. It's slowed down in the rate that it keeps rising. That's fair. However, it's still really difficult to maintain the lifestyle that you might have had 5 years ago with the same wage that you might be earning now. We're all feeling the pinch these days, but it's especially tough for younger people. The cost of living crisis has become a daily reality for so many, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed when wages aren't rising at the same rate as inflation. But let's put it into perspective. How different is this from what young people faced back in the 90s? That's what I would like to discuss today. How did our parents or even our grandparents experience the world back then? Well, not my grandparents. My grandparents are in Zimbabwe, so it's a completely different reality for them in Harare right now. But we're talking in the UK. What are the challenges that they faced compared to the challenges that we face? There's so many headlines that keep talking about young people being lazy, they don't want to go back to work. This is post pandemic, by the way. And there are headlines saying that young people should just cut their subscriptions, stop watching Netflix, stop buying avocado on toast, and then you'll be able to get on the property ladder. But a lot of the people that are saying these things are forgetting their privilege. And their privilege could have been that when they went to school, it was a lot cheaper. Some people that are alive today went to school, to university, by the way, for free. And now young people are paying £9,000 a year for tuition. And then you have to think about all the living costs that they need to factor in. They have to pay all this money back, and that's eating into the money that they earn post university, if they even went to university. But let's just rewind it a little bit. Let's talk about the basics, just the housing costs. If we go back to the 90s, property prices were significantly lower than today. According to the National Building Society, the average house price in the UK in 1993, for example, was about £51,000. £51,000, the average house price. Let's fast forward it to this year in 2024, and we're looking at an average of over £285,000. That is more than double. Even if you're going to adjust it for inflation, there's a huge difference here. And it's not just about buying the home. Maybe if you just wanted to rent a home, then it's actually still really expensive for you to be able to afford rent. In the 90s, during my research, I found out that quite a lot of people actually rented rather than bought a house. But renting was a lot cheaper at that point, which meant that they could save up to then buy a house later on. And then the deposit that you probably needed to save up was less than how much you'd need to save this year, of course, because of the house prices. Today, young people can find themselves paying between 30 to 50% of their income towards housing costs. That could be through renting or if they actually have a mortgage. This is such a significant amount. If it's only on your housing costs, we're not talking about food and other essential buys that you might need, traveling, the cost of fuel, childcare if you have a family. So it's really not comparable at the moment. And it's no wonder why so many young adults feel like the system has failed them. They don't know how they're going to get on the property ladder without having some help. There are some great schemes that have existed before. I've already mentioned I took advantage of the Help to Buy scheme, and there are constantly some schemes being put out by the government. So please look out for those to see how you can try and get on the property ladder. I believe there was a 1% mortgage as well, and there's advantages and disadvantages to these things. Will be getting into the details around getting on the property ladder, but that's not what today's video is about. More young people are relying on their parents to survive. The proportion of young adults who live in a parent's home has more than doubled between the 1970s and 2021, from 8% to 17%. This is why the bank of mom and dad is now a thing, and it's a permanent thing that we know. And I think it's really important to have this detail and to understand that times definitely have changed. And when we hear certain headlines about young people, and I think there is a responsibility to be informed about exactly what you mean, and to not put the blame on young people that are just trying to figure out a way of also achieving the same things that people could do 30 years ago. you know give them the opportunities that they can do that now. So I think we're talking about a systematic evaluation of what's going on in the economy right now and how can we support these young people, and let's have constructive conversations rather than putting the blame on someone that's buying avocado on toast. Okay, so next, let's talk about education and student debt. I'm looking at my research here. In the 90s, university education in the UK was largely funded by the government, and tuition fees didn't even exist until 1998. So when we're introducing tuition fees. We need to understand that this is through, unless parents can or family members can pay for that education, that student is going to have to pay for it after they graduate. So it started off at £1,000 per year in 1998. Not much, but today tuition fees are £9,250 per year. And they've been talking about increasing this, which is absolutely crazy. The student loans are available, fair enough, but many young people are graduating with debts that exceed 40 to £50,000. Now, this is a burden it didn't exist before, and we need to take this into context. Now, I know what you're going to say. After the student graduates, they don't have to pay back their student loan until they're working, and there is an income threshold that they need to reach to start paying back. And they only pay back 9% of their income. But that is 9% that could have been in their bank account going towards paying for their living costs. So this is what we're talking about in terms of having this burden if you do go to higher education, which is why a lot of young people now are opting not to go into higher education simply to avoid that debt. Okay, so we were discussing the costs of living and reasons why young people might have less disposable income. Now, let's dive into employment and wages. Back in the 90s, job stability was more common. People stayed in their jobs for years. You'll find people still in the same company for years and years, and then they benefited from a good pension. However, now it's encouraged actually to move companies so that you can benefit for higher salaries if you move from company to company rather than staying in the same company. So that's encouraged. And then on the flip side, on the company's perspective, there's quite a lot of layoffs. Every other month, we're hearing of mass layoffs, depending on which industry that you are in. So this means that there's less job stability. But the most important fact here is actually wage stagnation. So this means that when we have inflation, especially high inflation, you expect your wage to increase by the rate of inflation. In the UK, the sweet spot has been 2%. So companies usually, during the peak times, would increase your wage by 2% if the company is doing well. However, we've seen companies actually freeze their wages or layoffs so that they can save that on their labor costs. So there's been quite a lot that is affecting the amount of disposable income that you can get. And then just looking at inflation versus wage inflation, it's not really at the same rate. Therefore, your purchasing power has been diminished. You've got less money left in your pocket than people would have in the 1990s, as an example. So I was looking at the Office for National Statistics. Wages have struggled to keep up with inflation over the last decade, especially in recent years with high inflation rates, as you know. This means that even though people may be earning more in absolute terms compared to the 90s, for sure, we've all seen the average income now is roughly it's over 30K, maybe 36K in 2024, towards the end of 2024, compared to the 90s. However, the purchasing power is lower in today's terms. So young people today just feel like their reality where their paychecks don't stretch as far as maybe their parents would have. It makes it harder for them to maybe afford essentials or even then save for the future, which is what they keep being encouraged to do. I came across so many articles and so many quotes that just made me feel like, wow, that is actually a crazy world that we live in. So 1 in 5 baby boomers are a millionaire. That's crazy. A millionaire used to be something that you aspire to back in the day, whereas now 1 in 5 is a millionaire. But what does that actually mean? Based on kind of everything that we've talked about in this podcast today, maybe it doesn't mean anything because, the purchasing power is not that much. So that's something to consider. And young people are feeling cheated, they are feeling angry, and this is because of how they're portrayed in the news. Journalists just, they keep saying that, young people are lazy. They keep saying that young people aren't trying hard enough. They don't want to work. Whereas young people are saying that actually they can't find the jobs. So it's a very interesting climate right now. More than 7.4% of people's income is now used to meet energy bills. We all know the effect of the various wars that are happening at the moment have definitely affected the cost of energy. Now, this is the highest percentage, 7.4, the highest percentage since 1985, which is absolutely crazy. And there are additional costs as well. Additional costs such as childcare fees are really another factor, especially for young parents. Now, back in the day, childcare fees were a lot lower. That could be because you had the mothers looking after the children, so you didn't have to pay for childcare. But then this affected women's, pension. It affected how much they earned in the first place. So it's not necessarily a better situation. But now, with both parents going to work, that means that we need to have childcare. And you've seen a lot of young people rely on either their community or pay for it, which means that they've got less income left until those children go into school. And also other child related expenses are a lot higher now compared to what they were in the 90s. So there's a lot of factors that are affecting how much people have left in the bank. There are other costs like everyday costs such as food, transportation, and energy bills. I remember when we first moved to the UK, this was in the early 2000s, in 2001, I believe. And you'd go to buy, a food shop, and we'd do I think it was our weekly shop in Morrison's, and it was £30 for a whole, shopping cart worth of food. And now to achieve that, that will be around £250. I need to do the maths exactly and just take you guys along with me. But it just feels like the cost of food now has really gone up. But during my research, I actually know the cost of groceries has increased significantly. And with the price of basic things like bread, milk, and fruit, it's really gone up over the years. And this was partly due to Brexit, that fun period of our lives. And yeah, so importing certain goods is really expensive. So that's part of the reasons. And yeah, don't get me started on energy costs personally, and don't get me started on energy bills. Personally, I live in a flat and a block of flats, and we've had to go from using gas and electric to fully electric simply because you can't have gas heating straight into the building. So the electricity bill is just could cry each time that it comes through. And now it's getting colder. That means that that bill is going to be rising. So there's quite a lot in terms of the cost of living that we need to consider when it compared to in different decades. But I'm not saying that they didn't have to deal with, you know, inflation of energy prices, especially in the winter. Of course they did. I'm just saying, when you put it all together, all the list of everything that I just mentioned now, as well as other items that we need now. So think of the technology that we need. Everyone needs a laptop now to work. If you're looking for employment, you have to apply, send an email, which means that you need some sort of electronic device. We have so many subscriptions now, not just for entertainment, but for everything in our lives. Therefore, that means that each month we're seeing money coming out and we're not enjoying some of the things that other older people probably can now. So, what does this all mean for mental health? For young people, we've seen the rise of financial stress, and this is the leading stress causer, financial stress. And this is why Roots to Fruits are on a mission to educate everyone on financial literacy and putting in the best practices to help with your financial well-being. A recent study by the Mental Health UK found that 81% of young adults in the UK cite financial worries as a major source of stress. 81%. Now, if you compare this to the 90s, stress maybe wasn't being documented as well then. They really didn't understand a lot around mental health. But in the 90s, you had job security, and then you didn't have as much debt. So the debt burden wasn't as severe. Now we've got so much with the rise of buy now, pay later, as well as all the credit cards that are available. And there's been a spike in debt in terms of an individual's debt simply because of the cost of living crisis. Last year, it was recorded that a lot of people started to use credit to pay for essential bills, and they're still paying for that now, paying those credit card bills off now. This financial pressure has ripple effects on young people, their overall quality of life, from delaying major life decisions like starting a family or buying a home, to feeling like they're stuck in an endless cycle, just trying to get by. But there's good news. There's ways to navigate this, and really that's where our mission is at Roots to Fruits. We want to empower people. We want to empower young people or old, everyone. We would like to empower them to better manage their finances through building better money habits and creating a more stable future for themselves. No matter how tough the current climate could be, our workshops and our resources and our events that we host as well are designed to empower these young people to take control of their financial situation and develop a better money mindset. Whether it's understanding how to budget more effectively, learning more about investment opportunities, and taking advantage of any opportunities that you might have. So, if we mentioned the bank of mom and dad, if that's available to you, it's not a negative thing. Take advantage of that. If there's someone around that can help, that's a positive thing, because not a lot of people have that. And also just get out there, educate yourself, and get to find out the right support for you, for your situation, and take small steps, positive steps. They will make a huge difference in the long run. Remember, it's not about how much you earn, it's about what you do with it. That is all for us today, guys. Join us next week for some more seeds to sow. And please remember to support us by following, and leave a rating on our show on whichever platform you're listening to us from. To those watching on YouTube, please leave a like and a subscribe to our channel. All of your support goes a long way. Thank you so much for joining us today. And remember, keep shining.